All right, hello. So, in the chapter Black is the Body, if I had to describe that in the easiest way to someone, I would say that it's about Emily Bernard explaining her two daughters' experiences with racial identity and just like how they took it at a very young age and in certain situations that they dealt with, and Emily Bernard's thoughts, her daughter's thoughts, and yeah. So this chapter was broken down with specific titles, and each title had to do with that paragraph, if that makes sense. But the first title was Black History, and I highlighted a few things that I thought I would like to talk about, and that stood out to me. I highlighted where she said, despite my efforts to shield them, my daughters had somehow gotten wise to the absurd and illogical nature of American racial identity. I highlighted that because in the previous chapter, like literally the page before that, she talked about how she will encourage them to view the mysteries of life as vitalizing and not crippling. So I just think those two really do tie in together because it's like where she talks about wanting to shield them, but like kids learn and kids ask questions. So as a parent, I believe that like that isn't always possible to protect your kids from stuff like that, from learning different things. I also highlighted where she put, it took me a long time to get here to this place of racial pleasure. My earliest experiences of Blackness were defined by an unpleasant and uncomfortable hypervigilance. I just thought that was really interesting because it's just, it's crazy. Like, it's mind-blowing that that's the way things are for people. And then she put, being Black meant that you had to be constantly aware that you could never really be at ease. Early on, I got wise to the fact that being Black in a white place meant that the world was not a safe place, not for you. It's just, she just did a really great job writing this book. She's saying all these things very well, and it's crazy. I mean, it's mind-blowing that like this is the way life was. And even if like things are better now, like there's still issues in the world, you know? Like there's a lot of Black people that still don't feel safe, and it's so wrong for them not to feel safe. So it's crazy. And then where she puts, race determined the contours of every choice we made, you know? Like it's, like I said, it's crazy that people have to treat people differently just because of race. She also mentioned we lived in South Nashville, but in North Nashville, we could be Black in a way that was not possible in any other part of the city. In North Nashville, no one white was watching. We could relax. We were free. It's just, I mean, it's pretty relatable. Like sometimes I feel out of place if I go somewhere different. And like, I know no one has wrong intentions, not that I know of, but like, I feel like a lot of people sometimes just feel out of place, you know, or you don't feel like, obviously I feel like at home more with people from the same like culture, just like things like that. Also, she talks about this encounter that her daughter had with someone in her school. But basically her daughter Isabella corrected the girl and said, while the law may state that I am an American, I am African. It's just, to me, that was just mind-blowing because I think they're supposed to be very young. Well, 3rd grade. So for me to think that like this girl is standing her ground like that and like is very wise to know her roots, like where she's coming from and stuff like that, I just think it was very, I mean, it just comes to show how well Emily Bernard did with them. And then it's like, she keeps going and she says, when I came to this country, and then it cuts off because Emily Bernard talks about how astonished she is of what her daughter was talking about. So it made it difficult for Emily Bernard to even pay attention to what she was talking about. Like, it's mind-blowing to hear kids like speak what they think and just, yeah. And then she also talks about how proud she is that her daughters were born in a world were not only slaves, but also angels and aristocrats look like them. And then she talks about in the world which I grew up, Jesus was blonde and blue-eyed. And I highlighted that because, I mean, it is crazy. Like, it's very different from when she grew up, I'm assuming, to when her daughters were growing up. Like, it's just, things are changing a lot. And then she also puts, I envy my daughter's history as African Americans since the time when we were Negroes. It's just crazy. And then in the one that's titled Valentine, I highlighted where her daughter had that experience with that little boy named Gilbert. Because the part where it says, but a week before Valentine's Day, Gilbert told Isabella that he was only going to give the light people cards. So to me, that was just crazy because these kids are supposed to be super, super young. So that just comes to show how easily influenced kids can be. And just like, she mentions that he didn't mean it in a malicious way, which is true, but it's just crazy because even if his parents were racist or just like anybody else, the fact that they persuaded him to feel a certain way towards her now it's crazy. And I mean, she says, but Isabella told me that what he said had hurt her feelings. So I thought it was also good that for how young she was aware that it did hurt her feelings and it was okay for it to hurt her feelings. So I thought that was good that she was able to speak about it and tell her mom that it hurt her feelings. And then at the end of it all, it says the two of them spent the rest of the day playing happily together, which is, it makes sense. If they were, like, if they're kids and they're young, like, kids are very easy to, like, kids are happy, and, you know, so it's like, I know he didn't mean it in a malicious way, but it was just an interesting situation to read about. And then with that same situation, she said Gilbert was aware of Isabella in a way that she was not aware of him. She was used to seeing white people, but he was not used to seeing brown people. So that just comes to show, like, you know, just who you expose your kids to and where we grow up, and just, yeah, things are different everywhere. And then the other one that I highlighted a lot of things was the one that was titled A Regrettable Choice. So it's the one where she talks about how every black parent experiences their kids asking what does the N-word mean? And then I just thought it was crazy where she talks about her experience, and she talks about how she doesn't remember bringing that question home to her parents because for some reason she just always knew what that word meant. Like, she can't recall not knowing what the word meant. So that's just, to me, it's like, man, like, that sucks. Like, because it sucks that you even have to, like, know that word. It sucks that that's even a thing, a word. Like, it's, you know, it's just, people are bleh. And then she talks about the experience with her daughter. So the first time that her daughters heard the N-word, it was actually from her, and it's because she was doing some, like, work thing, I think, and it was the title of what she was working on. And she ends up explaining it to her daughters. She says, it's a bad word white people sometimes use to put black people down. I finally told them. Well, that's it, I thought. Their childhood is over. I think she explained it in a very well way for her kids. I mean, I know they're pretty young, but she dealt with it pretty well. And then she talks about the one that's titled B Words. I highlighted where she talks about, this is what childhood should look like. I think outside of this frame, racial discord grows and persists, but inside of the frame is a world that I could never have imagined when I was growing up. And I think I've said this throughout, like, when I was talking about the beginning of the chapter, but it's just crazy how it's just how she said it. Like, I could never have imagined when I was growing up. So it's like things were so different for her growing up versus her kids growing up. So I'm sure it's, like, wild to just, like, see how things are very different. Like, oh, wow, like, like I didn't get to experience that, you know, like her saying that, like it's crazy. But she also talks about how she grew up in was it South Nashville? She talks about how her childhood has changed as well, like how things were there when she was young to now. It's like things are different. And then the last thing I highlighted was where she says, it goes deep beyond the skin, the organic racial romance that informs everything I do. I just highlighted that because I thought it was kind of pretty, like where it says it goes deep beyond the skin, because it does, you know, like everyone's the same. We're all humans. We're all equal. We should all be equal. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this chapter. I loved it. I think she's amazing. Like, this book is actually pretty good, and I have been needing a book to read, so I'm very happy that this is what I'm reading right now. But yeah, she did good. This was awesome, and I'd recommend it to someone.